Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. Brandon again. Today we're going to be talking about the most expensive weight tree in the world and how there's a cheap fix to fix the only real issue I have with it, besides obviously the fact that it's the most expensive weight tree in the world. So first, let's jump into why this thing is so expensive. So the actual weight tree itself isn't overly expensive in my opinion. It retails for about $180, but one of the nice things and bad things is that you can actually add on a bunch of other stuff to it, and that's really where the price starts to creep up. All right, so let's start down here at the wheels. Now this is a cheap add-on, but I think it's one of the best ones you can do. Given the price, it's $9 extra to add in a set of wheels. Now, spoiler alert, if you load this thing up with weights like I have here and you put it on stall mats, you're probably not going to be able to move it around. But the wheels will have an extremely good benefit because what it does is it lifts the overall weight tree up off the ground, which means whatever weight you have on the bottom peg are then going to be higher. Now, personally speaking, I always like to put the 45s on the bottom, even though I know a lot of people like to put them on the middle tier or top tier because then they're easier to reach. But this wheel thing solves the problems, and aesthetically, I think it looks better with the biggest plates on the bottom. All right, so going back around to the back side, one of the other questions I get a lot about this weight tree are some of the other attachments that I've added to it. In this case, the barbell holders. So these are just from the Infinity Light line. These are for the horizontal mount for their racks, but because the post sizes are similar, the actual hardware is similar, you can add a lot of those Infinity attachments to this weight tree, which I really like. But then again, it does add to the cost. So these run about $50 each before shipping. So if you're getting two, that's like $100 added on top of this cost to the weight tree. You could actually fit a total of at least 4, and I'm sure even more if you get a little bit more creative. So the question in regards to these is, can you mount them on this system if you don't have the wheels? The answer is yes, because if you take a look, it's actually flush with the post itself. So these could fit flat on the ground and remain very stable and allow you to add some extra bar storage if you don't have a gun rack or other places to keep your barbells. Now, another thing I've added on here are these Infinity Light double storage pins. These are 5 inches each, which mean they're perfect for things like change and fractional plates, and they can bolt right onto the center post here. There's actually another side on the back where you could add in even more of these if you wanted. Rogue used to sell a chalk bowl that mounted to the Infinity line that I'd love to get, but for some reason it's only showing up in their European site. I know other companies make one as well, but that would be another addition. This thing is gonna run you about another $40. All right, so for those keeping track at home, we're at like $330 or so, and chances are this isn't the most expensive weight tree in the world, but it's kind of a running joke that it's #1 an expensive weight tree as is, and yet I keep sinking more money into it to some of these attachments, which I think adds a lot to the versatility of it. Now, where we could really start to increase the price is if you want to count what I actually have on here, which recently is like 1,000 pounds worth of Strength Co plates that I bought to replace my Rogue 6 shooters, which I'll do a dedicated review on these plates probably next week, but a little bit of a spoiler alert if you will. I really wanted made in the USA plates. The 6 shooters were not. These things are, they're black, they're awesome looking, they're E-coat, they're super tolerant on the bar, super tight fit. I like them a lot, which is probably why I spent $2 grand on them. And they're actually just opened up an East Coast shipping. So I'll talk about that next week, but chances are that they're gonna sell out at that time. So if you wanna get a jump on that, I highly recommend these. I'll link these in the description box below. So in addition to the plates, I've also thrown on 2 of my more expensive barbells on here, one of which is a brand new addition that I've only had for like 2 weeks. I haven't talked about it that much, but it's the Kabuki Cadillac bar. I've used this a couple times in training. I like it a lot. It retails for like $475 before shipping. I actually got a good deal on this one used secondhand because the wait time on a new one of these is ridiculous. It's almost up to like 6 months, as is a lot of stuff from Kabuki. Now, speaking of them, I've also added one of my most expensive bars. In fact, it is the most expensive bar I own, which is the Kabuki Next Gen Power Bar in electroless nickel. I've had this thing for like 3 years. Phenomenal bar, but it's super expensive, obviously. This thing retails for like just under $800 before shipping. It is worth it if you're interested in one, but for the most part, I would recommend something more affordable because there's similar bars for about half the price. All right, also hanging out way down here, which you might have seen in some of the other video shots already, is this little mini barbell or loadable dumbbell from the Strength Co. I've posted this on Instagram, but haven't talked much about it on the channel yet, but it's actually resting on these barbell butlers, which are 3D printed little devices, which you can either have to hold a bar by the sleeves or the shaft, which allows you to clean either on the ground. So it's these handy little tools to clean the bar, but it also works out very well for some extra bar storage on this weight tree itself. All right, and last but not least, I have this little humidity sensor from Accurite that I keep here on the actual weight tree. It's magnetic. It's nice just because I am very cognizant of what the humidity level is down here on the basement, because the better I keep the humidity, the less upkeep I'm gonna have to do on my bars. All right, so there you go. If we start counting on some of the things on this weight tree, it quickly jumps from $330 up to around $4,000 worth of gear on here, which might make it the most expensive weight tree in the world. Now, truth be told, even though this thing is pretty expensive for what it is, I really like it, especially, again, the versatility of being able to bolt stuff on and getting creative with it. And I've seen a lot of you guys send me your own do-it-yourself ideas of things that you've done to your own weight trees in that regard. Now, that being said, there is still one glaring issue which I initially mentioned on my first video on this tree, which I'll link in the description box below, and that is the bolt on the bottom. The way that they're set up and the length of them actually stick out to the point that when the bottom weights are pressed flush against the weight tree, the bolts are gonna dig into the face of your weight plates. Now, that's not a good thing, obviously. You know, some people will say all weight is weight, it doesn't matter, it's gonna get beat up. That's true, but you don't want it to get beat up by a weight tree, especially when you've spent this much money on something like this. All right, so the good news is that there's a relatively cheap fix for this, and that is what I've done is got some 3D printed spacers from Aperture Engineering, which go here and here. They push the weights out further, and what that does, it avoids hitting the bolt head here and the bolt end here, and give you enough space where you're not going to be scratching up your weight plates. The nice thing about these is you can also get them in any color you want, so red, blue, pink, yellow, whatever color you can really think of, they can do. So if you're the type of person to color coordinate your gym or go for a specific color theme, you can make these match and really pop. Personally speaking, I went with the black version here just because I wanted to match, number one, the post, but also the plates. So it's a black on black look, which really contrasts well with my mostly white equipment gym. That sounds terrible. Now, I could have just fixed the bottom and been done, but that wouldn't lead to the most expensive weight tree ever. So what I actually did is I added spacers on the middle rung and the top rung, which I'll show you in a second. Now, for the middle rung, what I wanted to do was add in spacers, not because there's any bolt to see that would actually scar or mar the weight plates themselves, but in order to fit the actual change plates I have in front. This way, the weights are pushed out far enough where the change plates in front can actually be pushed flush up against the weight tree and they fit nice, and the plates aren't going to be bumping into each other. So just like the middle rung, I did the same with the top, but in this case, I actually went with a standard size one. The ones in the middle are a custom length in order to exactly fit the weight plates that I had. These ones are the same actual thickness as the bottom rung, because in this case with the change plates, it's not in the middle of these, it's more on the bottom, so I only have to account for a smaller part of the diameter. All right, so as I mentioned, I got these through Aperture Engineering. I have 6 of them at $6 each, which means I paid $36 out of pocket for these. Yes, I paid for them myself. But I reached out to Greg, who owns the company, before I made this video and said, hey, I'm gonna do a video. Any chance you could hook the people up watching if they wanna get some with a discount code? So there is now a discount code BASEMENT, which will save you 10%, which in reality isn't that much. $6 each, you're saving 60 cents per actual spacer. But that way you save some money, and in the end, mine is still gonna be more expensive than yours, so I can still claim that I have the most expensive weight tree in the world. Now, since these things are 3D printed, he can get pretty creative with these. These ones are specifically made for the Rogue Rack. The middle tier on mine was a custom dimension that I had asked for based off of my own weight plates. But if you have like a Titan rack, a Rep Fitness one, a Sorinex, whatever, he has all custom dimensions that'll fit those. And you can always put in notes if you want anything specific to your application. But he also has other things on his site, which I think a lot of people will find helpful. So he 3D prints stuff that'll protect your J-cups. If you have like a Monster Light system that doesn't typically protect the lip, he has things that'll fit all sorts of things from spotter arms to whatever you can really think of. Some pretty unique and creative designs, which could be helpful to you if you're in the market. Now, one of the things that I also talked to him about, because it got me thinking with these spacer ideas, is you could reach out to him and get ones that'll fit an Olympic barbell, where that might come in useful as the same general principle of avoiding weight plates hitting a rack. So if you're the type of person who has an issue with hitting your plates against your squat rack and you're walking out a squat, you could ask him to make some custom size ones at whatever width you want in order to push the plates out just enough so you're not going to be hitting those uprights anymore. The other option would be get like a squat bar or like a Texas power bar that has really thick collars. So this is a cheaper option. Now, when I started talking about that with him, it got my mind thinking, you could also use those same spacers on a normal bar to make it a quasi deadlift bar, because those spacers are gonna push the weight out further. And what that's going to do is have the same effect as like a bumper plate, which is going to be further weight distribution, which is going to increase the whip of your barbell. Now, true, it's not going to be the same amount of whip as, like, let's say a 27 millimeter specific deadlift bar, but for something that's going to run you $6 each with a 10% discount of basement, of course, you could basically emulate that for much, much cheaper and not have to invest in another barbell. So like I said, some pretty creative things that are out there. If you're interested, I'll link this in the description box below to check it out. But that is why this is the most expensive weight tree ever, and a cheap fix in order to make it just about right. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about before I wrap this video up are the actual sleeves themselves. I've seen a lot of people question me about these, how they hold up, and I've seen a lot of people in the reviews on this on the Rogue website say that they don't last whatsoever. So for me, after a couple of months, I think they've actually held up pretty well. Now, these are powder coated, so they're going to scrape off over time, especially if you have plates with a tight tolerance like I have with the Strength Co ones, or if you're putting calibrated weight plates on here. But in my opinion, it doesn't really look too bad. And to be honest, I mean, in this case, it's a weight tree where there's going to be constant friction on and off. It's going to get beat up a little bit. If you are concerned, I have seen some people do some pretty unique things with these. If you're interested in seeing a video on that, make sure you leave that in the comment section below. But hopefully that gives you some insight into the most expensive weight tree ever and a cheap way to fix it. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.